Today marks 5 weeks since the massacre. Today marks 5 weeks of this war. As our military operations intensify, as our suffering continues, I think about a question that I seem to keep being asked. The question is peace possible? I was first asked this question only 1 week after the war began. 3 weeks into the war, I received a gift, a small stone like a paperweight, painted with one word, peace. At those times and today, talking about peace seems difficult, even perhaps wrong. There are 240 hostages still in captivity, including children and elderly. The few hostages who were freed brought us a fleeting flash of comfort and underscored our ongoing pain. Here in our community, some of us want to think about peace. And here in our community, some of us can't bear to think about peace. Personally, I don't feel particularly peaceful. Hearing about the tragedy of war, hearing about the dangers of anti-Semitism affecting our home and community here in Los Angeles, with the past weeks that we have had, I don't feel particularly peaceful. But I know, because I've had conversations with you, that some in our community are thinking of peace. And our parashah this week contains a story that throughout our generations has seemed to ask us to think about peace, and even to talk about peace. It's the story of the burial of Abraham. This was the total span of Abraham's life, our Torah teaches, 175 years. And Abraham breathed his last, dying at a good, ripe age, old and contented, and he was gathered to his kin. His sons, Isaac and Ishmael, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite, facing Mamre, the field that Abraham had bought from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried, and Sarah his wife. The surprising part of this story, for readers throughout our generations, is that Isaac and Ishmael bury their father together. These two sons of Abraham, throughout their lives, were set up to compete, to vie for the same prize, the distinction as Abraham's most important son, his primary heir. Both sons, both sides, have a claim that they feel is valid. Of course, we side with Isaac. His claim is that he was born to Sarah, that his biological mother is Abraham's bride. And of course, the other side is Ishmael's side. His claim is that he is the first son, the oldest son. Despite this dispute, which is obviously long-standing and difficult to resolve, these two brothers come together to honor their father after his death. Our Eitz Chaim Torah commentary sees these two brothers, these two sons, coming together and makes two assumptions. First, our commentary assumes that Ishmael has forgiven Abraham for sending him and his mother away in his youth. And second, our commentary assumes that Isaac has forgiven Abraham for the Akedah, in which Isaac almost loses his life at the hands of his father. In particular, our Eitz Chaim Torah commentary focuses on the description of Abraham as contented. And it asks us, these two brothers coming together, isn't this a model for forgiveness? And then our Eitz Chaim commentary actually asks us, you can read this yourself on page 140, Can't this be a model for contemporary Arabs and Israeli Jews to find grounds for forgiveness and reconciliation? This commentary was published in 2001. I think that even at that time, this rhetorical question felt aspirational, and all the more so, it feels at least aspirational, if not impossible today. It cites as its proof texts one source from the Talmud and one source from the Midrash. Going back to these primary sources, we find that both of them use an almost identical phrase to describe Ishmael. Yishmael oseh teshuvah, and Yishmael asa teshuvah, meaning that Ishmael made teshuvah, he changed his ways. Now, in this context, what this means is that Ishmael has changed his mind about which of Abraham's two sons should inherit Abraham's authority. Ishmael has accepted the authority, the primacy of Isaac. So we're looking for grounds of forgiveness and reconciliation, and what we find as these grounds is the other side yielding to our authority. So back in the text of our Torah, immediately after we read about Isaac and Ishmael burying Abraham, we read, after the death of Abraham, God blessed Abraham's son Isaac, and Isaac settled near Be'er Lahai Roi. Then the very next verse, this is the line of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's slave, bore to Abraham. So our text is clear. Yes, these two brothers seem to have reconciled, but one side has won. Isaac has been blessed. Ishmael has not. And Ishmael has been clearly identified as the son of Abraham, born to an Egyptian slave woman who was subservient to Isaac's mother. Well, is this peace? Because it seems like one side has won victory over the other. So now very early on in this war that we're finding our way through, that we're finding a way to live through today, I think it was actually the next day, October 8th, I started to hear people say, well, sure, we want peace, but first we want victory. After that, we can have peace. Just a few days ago, I heard an interview with two people, two very experienced international lawyers who have created a new version of a peace plan for our Holy Land. This interview was not easy for me to listen to because I feel this isn't a time of peace. But still, I did listen. I heard the voices of two people who have been working on this situation and this particular type of solution for a very long time. They have already failed. Not in this situation, but decades ago they failed. I don't think they're particularly optimistic. They know that their new plan, the best thing they've been able to come up with so far, doesn't address and solve every potential problem. It's just that they see peace as preferable to war. They see peace as preferable to violence, and they aren't giving up. Now, also just a few days ago, I heard a different interview with Zohar Palti, the former director of intelligence for the Mossad. He spoke not about peace, but instead about victory. He noted the American victory in our war on terrorism. He noted that we in the United States, and I quote, don't have a September 11 anymore, thank God. Palti continued and explained that our victory in Israel would look like this. First, rendering Hamas incapable of any vicious attack in the future. Second, that we would bring our hostages back home. And third, that we would rebuild our villages and our kibbutzim so that our people could go back to their homes and feel safe. Then, in a way that made me, as a listener to this interview, feel that the interviewing journalist was not even listening to Zohar Palti, the journalist asked him, what he thought about the people on the other side of the war, what he thought about the innocent civilians among the enemy. He replied, saying that at this point in time, he needed to think about his own people first. Later on, he could think about the welfare of the enemy. And this is the tension we're dealing with, both in our world today and in our parasha. Many of us want peace. Some of us work for peace. Some of us yearn for peace. But in our parasha, the sons of Abraham who come together to bury him are listed as Isaac and Ishmael, not Ishmael and Isaac. The midrashic and Talmudic explanation for this brotherly togetherness is that it was made possible by Ishmael's teshuvah, by Isaac's victory. This work continues to teach me that peace is more complicated than I think it is. On the one hand, we can't give up on the idea of peace, can we? Well, on the other hand, this isn't our time of peace. We must win victory. Well, on the other hand, what about all the people who have worked for peace for years, for decades? And on the other hand, what about those few whose hate, whose violence makes peace impossible? As I continue to learn about what peace truly might mean, what peace truly might be like, I think about our ideal of Shabbat. Shabbat is me'ein olam haba, a taste of the world to come. On Shabbat, we are invited to put down our cell phones, to put down our wallets, to take a 25-hour break from fidgeting with our calendars. And taking this invitation, tasting the world to come, isn't something that all of us regularly do. On Shabbat, we're invited to experience a version of the world that is not like our reality. It's supposed to be even better than our reality. But we don't always take that invitation. Sometimes we just don't feel like it. And other times we have good reasons. We have good reasons for saying no to this taste of the world to come. Yet still, today and every Shabbat, we are invited to experience Shabbat, this taste of the world to come, whether or not we're feeling particularly in the mood for Shabbat. And this week, our parasha invites us to think about peace, whether or not we are feeling particularly peaceful. We might not take those invitations, and we might have good reason. But let's remember, today and this week, those invitations still stand. We don't need a special reminder to know that peace is not our reality today. So instead, let's remember that peace, if we ever find it, might be better than anything we have ever experienced in our reality. Peace might taste like the world to come. Shabbat Shalom.